The One Punch Man franchise just can't seem to catch a break. After its anime received a smash hit first season, the subsequent seasons have been, let's just say, less than ideal. And some of you may, or may not know, about the series' first PC and home console game, A Hero Nobody Knows, or as I like to call it, a game nobody wants. It was a critical and commercial failure, being widely panned by players and critics alike, and ultimately being shut down after 2 years of its launch. But there is another. Another One Punch Man game that has the possibility to surpass A Hero Nobody Knows to be the definitive One Punch Man game. Oh, it's a gacha game that is arguably just as bad, or maybe even worse? This is One Punch Man World. One Punch Man World first released on PC and mobile platforms on January 31st, 2024. Now, it wasn't the franchise's first mobile game. There had been a few released prior, but this was the first cross-platform game that released simultaneously on mobile and PC, which you would hope means that this is a game that is a cut above your standard mobile game. It's not. It was published by Crunchyroll Games, the publishers behind a number of other anime mobile games, most of which were poorly received and lost support soon after they launched. It was developed by Chinese developers Perfect World Games, who worked on other mobile games like Persona 5 The Phantom X and Final Fantasy Awakening, as well as some classics like Legend of Martial Arts and Hot Dance Party. It was first announced on July 17, 2023, with a trailer showcasing the gameplay and open world elements. It seems many were tricked into thinking this was going to be a major multi-platform console game, and to be fair, it did kind of read that way throughout the trailer, with no specific mentions of it being a mobile game. But regardless, I don't think it looked very promising from the onset, but many on YouTube seemed to be pretty excited about it, claiming that the open world looked fun, and that it could even be better than A Hero Nobody Knows. It would go on to launch on January 31st, 2024. On Metacritic, it would garner a 6.3 user score based on 9 user ratings, so I don't really know how indicative of the public's perception that game really is, but it seems about right to me. The common sentiment among most forums is that this game isn't very good and is just another in a long line of underwhelming and repetitive gacha games. If you really like One Punch Man, or you really like gacha games, then you might get some enjoyment out of it, but from an objective standpoint, it wasn't great. And to add insult to injury, the developers were very neglectful of this game, rarely adding new content, rarely updating the game, and now in 2025, the game's second year, the game is effectively dead. There wasn't even anything new released to coincide with the premiere of the anime's third season. So why was it so horrible? Why did it die so quickly after launch? Was it really just a cheaply produced cash grab meant to make a quick buck off of gullible fans? Well, yeah. Let's start with the gameplay. If you thought A Hero Nobody Knows was repetitive and boring, then let me introduce you to even more repetitive and even more boring. The gameplay is most reminiscent of a simple third-person action game. You have your normal attack, dodge, some abilities, and you can lock on to enemies. However, the gameplay usually just boils down to spamming attacks and abilities and eventually winning. Every enemy feels the same to fight, every match feels the same to play, it's just the same thing over and over. And to prove my point that it is mindless button mashing, you can just let it play automatically. I for one am not a fan of auto combat in games, but I know that's kind of a staple of gacha games. I just feel like if the game can play itself, then why the f am I even gonna bother playing it in the first place? The only somewhat saving grace here is that the characters each have their own unique abilities you can learn. The problem with that though, is that you have to unlock characters from the gacha system, and if you know me, then you know I hate gacha systems for unlocking characters. At least with this game, it's not like it's a competitive online game where players with better characters have an advantage over those who don't, but it's still annoying that you have to either grind endlessly or just fork over some cash to unlock the characters you actually want, because from the start all you get is Lightning Max, Smile Man, and Lily, and I can't imagine those are anyone's favorite characters. Well, the combat may be boring, but what about the open world that everyone's so hyped about after the initial trailer? Well, it isn't all that impressive. Who could have guessed? You simply walk around from point A to point B without any interesting traversal options or really much to explore. The feature I will give some credit to though are these boss battles that you can participate in. Essentially, you can enter these boss battles and all of your stats will be set to a fixed amount, regardless of how much you've leveled up your character. So these battles are purely skill based, which I think is pretty neat, because for the rest of the missions, if you just spam level up items on your characters, then you can just beat them pretty easily. That's one trope of gacha games that I really don't like. And you know what? Just for funsies, I'm going to run through Flame Hunter's official definitive patented list of gacha game tropes that I just really don't enjoy, man. A confusing and ugly UI. There are so many different tabs and options to click through that it gets so confusing about what is where. Not to mention, the UI itself is also just ugly with the most basic font and design choices imaginable. A billion different currencies. There are multiple different currencies, some premium, some earned in game, some gacha tickets, some other gacha tickets. It's so annoying because I'll go to roll for something and it actually needs this other type of currency that I don't have, while I have an endless supply of this other currency that's completely worthless. A billion different systems. There's multiple different systems, upgrades, ways to level up your characters. Why is all this necessary when most of them just do the same thing, which is just increasing your character's stats? Alright, rapid fire round to finish this list off. Characters locked behind gacha systems, piss easy combat after you easily max level your characters, and tons of different premium battle passes. Sorry to go off on the anti-gacha tangent there, I just had to get it off my chest. I apologize to any gacha fans I may have offended, I get it, I like gambling too, I just prefer when I get to win real money and not digital characters. But here's the real question with this game. Is it better than A Hero Nobody Knows? Taking into account the fact that a world is free and A Hero Nobody Knows isn't, I'm still gonna say A Hero Nobody Knows. It may cost money, but it's usually on sale on Steam for cheap, and a physical copy is worth about $15 to $20. And while A Hero Nobody Knows does have repetitive and clunky gameplay, a lackluster story mode, underwhelming free roaming, and overall cheap looking visuals, World has all of that but worse. To me, A Hero Nobody Knows at least has some uniqueness that makes it a more interesting game to check out. You get all of the characters without having to pay money, so you can easily just dick around with your friends playing as your favorite characters. You get to create and customize your own character. I will admit, the character customization options are a little limited for my liking, but you can still make some pretty stupid stuff with it. There's at least some humor throughout the story that makes it a little more entertaining. So while Hero Nobody Knows is a cheap experience with little charm, World is a cheap experience with no charm. Now, I still don't recommend you buy A Hero Nobody Knows, and I also don't recommend you even try World either. The devs have clearly given up, and you'll get pretty bored with it rather quickly. So if you're a One Punch Man fan, what do I recommend you do? I don't know, man, just give up?